Okay, so, yeah, page 216.
Not like last time.
It's not a problem. 216. At any rate, I'll go ahead and start talking. The bottom line is we're going to read the Gosho tonight, The Heritage of the Ultimate Law of Life. Okay, on page 216 of volume 1 of the Writings of Nitra and Daishonin. We just finished the commentaries on Buddhism by, Mr. Saito from the study department, So you already have a great idea. Actually, you already know everything you'd ever really need to know about this Gosho in advance. But then when we get done reading the Gosho, we're going to go into President Kata's lecture. And the cool thing about this is a very personalized lecture. He says, I think a lot. My opinion, a lot. Okay? So I think that everybody will get a lot out of us going through this again and sharing it with everybody else. So tonight we're starting on page 216, volume 1, The Heritage of the Ultimate Law of Life. There's a lot to read. I'm going to get after it. Okay, it starts on page 216, top left column. I have just carefully read your letter to reply. The ultimate law of life and death as transmitted from the Buddha to all living beings is Myoho Renge-kyo. The 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo were transferred from Shakyamuni and many treasures, the 2 Buddhas inside the treasure tower, to Bodhisattva superior practices carrying on a heritage unbroken since the infinite past. Myo represents death and Ho, life. Living beings that pass through the 2 phases of life and death are the entities of the 10 worlds, or the entities of Myoho Renge-kyo. Tentai says that one should understand that living beings and their environments and the causes and effects at work within them are all the law of Renge, the Lotus. Here, living beings and their environments means the phenomena of life and death. Thus, it is clear that where life and death exist, cause and effect, or the law of the Lotus, is at work. The great teacher Dingyo states, the 2 phases of life and death are the wonderful workings of one mind. The 2 ways of existence and non-existence are the true functions of an inherently enlightened mind. No phenomena, either heaven or earth, yin or yang, the sun or the moon, the 5 planets, or any of the worlds from hell to Buddhahood, are free from the 2 phases of life and death. Life and death are simply the 2 functions of Myoho Renge-kyo. In his great concentration and insight, Tentai says, arising is the arising of the essential nature of the law, and extinction is the extinction of that nature. Shakyamuni and many treasures, the 2 Buddhas, are also the 2 phases of life and death. Shakyamuni Buddha, who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago, the Lotus Sutra that leads all people to Buddhahood, and we ordinary human beings are in no way different or separate from one another. To chant Myoho Renge-kyo with this realization is to inherit the ultimate law of life and death. This is a matter of the utmost importance for Nichiren's disciples and lay supporters, and this is what it means to embrace the Lotus Sutra. For one who summons up one's faith and chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the profound insight that now is the last moment of one's life, the sutra proclaims, when the lives of these persons come to an end, they will be received into the hands of 1,000 Buddhas who will free them from all fear and keep them from falling into the evil paths of existence. How can we possibly hold back our tears at the inexpressible joy of knowing that not just 1 or 2, not just 100 or 200, but as many as 1,000 Buddhas will come to greet us with open arms? Concerning one who disbelieves the Lotus Sutra, because the sutra states, when his life comes to an end, he will enter the Avicii hell. The wardens of hell will surely come for one and take one away by the hands. How pitiful. The 10 kings of the world of the dead will then pass judgment, and the heavenly messengers who have been with one since birth will berate one for one's evil deeds. Think of those 1,000 Buddhas extending their hands to all of Nichiren's disciples and lay supporters who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as melons or moonflowers extending their slender vines. My followers are now able to accept and uphold the Lotus Sutra because of the strong ties they formed with it in their past existences. They are certain to obtain the fruit of Buddhahood in the future. The heritage of the Lotus Sutra flows within the lives of those who forsake it, who never forsake it in any lifetime whatsoever, whether in the past, the present, or the future. But those who disbelieve and slander the Lotus Sutra will immediately destroy all the seeds for becoming a Buddha in this world. Because they cut themselves off from the potential to attain enlightenment, they do not share the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death. All disciples and lay supporters of Nitra should chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the spirit of many in body but one in mind, transcending all differences among themselves, to become as inseparable as fish and the water in which they swim. This spiritual bond is the basis for the universal transmission of the ultimate law of life and death. Herein lies the true goal of Nichiren's propagation. When you are so united, even the great desire for widespread propagation can be fulfilled. But if any of Nichiren's disciples disrupt the unity of many in body but one in mind, they would be like warriors who destroy their own castle from within. Nichiren has been trying to awaken all the people of Japan to faith in the Lotus Sutra so that they too can share the heritage and attain Buddhahood. But instead they have persecuted me in various ways and finally had me banished to this island. You have followed me, Nichiren, however, and met with sufferings as a result. It pains me deeply to think of your anguish. Gold can neither be burned by fire nor corroded or swept away by water, but iron is vulnerable to both. A worthy person is like gold, a fool like iron. You are like the pure gold because you embrace the gold of the Lotus Sutra. The sutra states, just as among all the mountains, Mount Sumeru is foremost, so this Lotus Sutra is likewise. It also states, the good fortune you gain thereby cannot be burned by fire or washed away by water. It must be ties of karma from the distant past that have destined you to become my disciple at a time like this. Shakyamuni and many treasures certainly realized this truth. The sutra statement, those persons who had heard the law dwelled here and there in various Buddha lands, constantly reborn in company with their teachers, cannot be false in any way. How admirable that you have asked about the transmission of the ultimate law of life and death. I have never heard of anyone who has asked such a question. I have answered in complete detail in this letter, so please take it deeply to heart. The important point is to carry out your practice confident that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo alone is the heritage that was transferred from Shakyamuni and many treasures to Bodhisattva superior practices. The function of fire is to burn and give light. The function of water is to wash away filth. The winds blow away dust and breathe life into plants, animals, and human beings. The earth produces the grasses and trees, and heaven provides nourishing moisture. The 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo are also like that. They are the cluster of blessings brought by the bodhisattvas of the earth, disciples of the Buddha in his true identity. The Lotus Sutra says that Bodhisattva superior practices will appear now in the latter day of the law to propagate this teaching. But has this happened? Whether or not Bodhisattva superior practices has appeared in this world, Nichiren has already made a start in propagating this teaching. Be resolved to summon forth the great power of faith and chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with your prayer that your faith will be steadfast and correct at the moment of death. Never seek any other way to inherit the ultimate law of life and death and manifest it in your life. Only then will you realize that earthly desires are enlightenment and that the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. Even embracing the Lotus Sutra would be useless without the heritage of faith. I will go into particulars again on another occasion. With my deep respect, Nichiren, the Shramana of Japan, the 11th day of the 2nd month in the 9th year of Brunei, cyclical sign Minazoe Saru, reply to the Honorable Sairenbo. And I won't go into the background because we've already read this all a couple times now. So we're going to go right into President Ikeda's lecture. okay? What you're going to find is a different lecture to a degree. It's obviously much longer and more broad than the lecture that was put out by the study department, but it's wonderful. And it's got a lot of additional material in it that we'll have to figure out a way to, we just skipped all these kinds of things that were already dictionary definitions, but we'll incorporate them as we go along. The other thing that's going to be different between this and things that I've read in the past is that the form factor for this gives you a key point summary at the end of each chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and read that this time. We didn't before because we didn't really need to. And then also there's a section where there are 2 questions asked that are supposed to formulate dialogue and reflection. We won't really go so much into dialogue, but for those of you that hear this that want to reflect on what's being said, please do so. So, also I want to start by qualifying what this says on page V or 5. This is basically, this series of lectures by SGI President Ikeda was published in SGI USA's Living Buddhism from May-June 2007 issue through the May-June 2008 issue. Okay, and then you can find the references to the Gosho Zenshu, Lotus Sutra as LS, orally transmitted teachings as OTT, and WND. Okay, so starting from page 1, across from page 1, it gives a little bit of, I'll read that. The heritage on the opposite page of page 1. The heritage of the ultimate law of life, SGI President Ikeda's study lecture series. This is a series of lectures by SGI President Daisaku Ikeda on the heritage of the ultimate law of life. Nitra Daishonin states Shakyamuni Buddhahood attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago. The Lotus Sutra leads all people to Buddhahood, and we ordinary human beings are in no way different or separate from one another. To chant Myoho Renge-kyo with this realization is to inherit the ultimate law of life and death. On page 1, the ultimate law of life and death, in brackets 1. Striving in the spirit of the oneness of mentor and disciple to open the way to true happiness for all humanity. And from this, we already know when he's saying mentor and disciple, who's he talking about? Nichiren and everyone that chants Nam Myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? We all have mentors. Okay? Anybody that progresses your faith through sharing what they know from the endeavors that they've had in their own life can be a mentor to you. It depends on you as to whether or not they're a mentor. The mentor doesn't determine whether or not that they're the mentor. Okay? The people listening to that individual determine whether or not that individual is a mentor. So, let me where's my water? Did I leave it over there? I'm going to borrow yours. Thank you.
In your cup.
Okay, thank you. Life and death, just a glass if I could have that. Okay, so striving in the spirit of the oneness of mentor and disciple to open the way to true happiness for all humanity. What is to open the way to true happiness for all humanity? Come on, this is like
Buddhahood.
That's a part of the process, but actually is to establish Kosen Rufu. Okay, because we're talking all humanity, right? Happiness of all humanity is Kosen Rufu. Okay? Life and death are the greatest mysteries, and they form the primary focus of religion. Where have we come from, and where do we go? Why are human beings born? Are our lives just random events, or do they have some greater purpose? What is the meaning of death? Are we merely reduced into meaningless nothingness, as so many people in our modern world vaguely believe? Or are we restored to a luminous, immortal soul, as many time-honored religious traditions of East and West maintain? Or, as Shakyamuni Buddha teaches in expounding the middle way, is it neither? The wisdom of Buddhism transcending the extremes of the views of annihilation and permanence. So that's what the first part of this is going to go into, all right? This whole Buddhist concept of the middle way, all right? So it says, Nichiren Daishonin's writing, The Heritage of the Ultimate Law of Life, expounds a matter of ultimate importance relating to life and death. The use of the word ultimate suggests the critical nature of this subject, as it is also the essential purpose of Buddhism and the foundation of religion. The Lotus Sutra uses the term one great reason to express the ultimate purpose for Buddhas, plural, all of us, to appear in the world, to enable all living beings to realize the Buddha wisdom and attain enlightenment. So what does it say there? One great reason. What's the one great reason? It's the advent of the bodhisattvas of the earth to establish Kosen Rufu. Do you understand? Because Kosen Rufu affects everybody, not just us. Do you understand that? All right, so the Lotus Sutra uses the term one great reason to express the ultimate purpose for Buddhas to appear in the world. Your ultimate purpose was to become a Buddha in your present form and to contribute to Kosen Rufu, to enable all living beings to realize the Buddha wisdom and attain enlightenment. The matter of ultimate importance relating to life and death that Nitra teaches in this writing is closely connected to this ideal of universal enlightenment in the Lotus Sutra. And so what is that ideal of universal enlightenment in the Lotus Sutra? What is he talking about there? What's the Lotus Sutra teach that would correspond to that? Itai Doshin, yeah, but actually, again, what he's really talking about here, the matter of ultimate importance relating to life and death that Nitra teaches in this writing is closely connected to this ideal of universal enlightenment in the Lotus Sutra. The ideal of universal enlightenment in the Lotus Sutra is that you're already the Buddha exactly as you are. Right. That the Lotus Sutra is already qualified that the 9 worlds all exist within the eternal 10th, and the eternal 10th world exists in the eternal 9. That had not been ever clear until the Lotus Sutra. So what did that then say? That all living beings already possess the Buddha nature. Okay? It's not something that is acquired. It's something that is awakened. That's the universal enlightenment that's taught in the Lotus Sutra. Everybody's already a Buddha. Get it? Okay, so based on the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, and what's that? What's a dependent origination, guys? That everything that exists only because of everything else. Okay? That nothing comes forth on its own. Everything is influenced by everything else. Okay? That's dependent. So based on the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, or the fact that everything around you reflects your karma, always, okay? One of the truths to which Shakyamuni became enlightened, the sufferings of aging and death arise from innate darkness or ignorance within the individual. Why? The sufferings of aging and death arise from innate darkness or ignorance within the individual. What's he talking about there?
Suffering.
Yes, he's talking about suffering, but why is it suffering? Because they're ignorant to the true nature of life, the true nature of their own lives. As a result, the obvious things that are going to hit us, which are aging and death, every single one of us, everything in the universe, the moon, the sun, the Milky Way, all of it, okay, is going to go through that same process, right? So, but we don't experience sufferings or death as suffering, aging and death as sufferings, okay, if we understand them correctly, what their function is, what the reality of our own life is, right? He says the Buddha teaches that these sufferings can be overcome. In other words, the influence of this negative darkness from ignorance can be overcome by extinguishing this inner benightedness. Okay? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay. The wisdom or insight that enabled Shakyamuni to attain enlightenment represents the wisdom that conquers the delusion and sufferings related to death. Do you understand what that's saying there? Okay, if you go into this phase of your life with the right understanding, background, and life condition, those won't be experienced as sufferings. Okay? Actually, you'll be going, I'm finally going to get closer to getting a new body. The wisdom or insight that enables Shakyamuni to attain enlightenment represents the wisdom that conquers the delusion and sufferings related to death. Based on this wisdom, the Buddha rejected the two most common views of death, which represented two extremes, and both of which he considered erroneous. Neither could fully enable people to transcend the fear and uncertainty of death. Do you understand which two views he's looking at? Mm-hmm. Okay, permanence and annihilation, right? Okay, so neither could fully enable people to transcend the fear of and uncertainty of death. One of these was the view of death as the annihilation or complete cessation of self, the view of annihilation, while the other was the view of death as the continuing, or the self continuing in the form of an unchanging immortal soul or spirit, the view of permanence. Both views consider the question of life and death only from the point of birth until one's demise, with life and death seen as opposites. So it's this lifetime only is the view, right? As such, neither view embodies the wisdom that correctly perceives the true reality of life and death. It seems that most people, conscious as they are of their mortality, hold one of these two views in some form or other. The view of annihilation, however, gives rise to fear and anxiety about death. And the view of permanence, we find, is a product of self-attachment. Nitra also indicates that these two views cannot help people gain true happiness. For instance, in Letter from Sato, he writes that human beings tend to be terrified of death and attached to life. The most dreadful thing in the world are the pain of fire, the flashing of swords, and the shadow of death. Even horses and cattle fear being killed. No wonder human beings are afraid of death. Even a leper clings to life. How much more so a healthy person? Then, to describe the wisdom of Buddhism, he cites a lesson from Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra. The Buddha teaches that even filling the entire major world system with the 7 kinds of treasures does not match offering one's little finger to the Buddha and the Lotus Sutra. Okay. Does everybody know who the Boy Snow Mountains is? Mm-hmm. Says Sendoji, right? Mm-hmm. The Boy Snow Mountains gave his own body and the aesthetic aspiration for the law peeled up his own skin in order to record the Buddha's teachings. Since nothing is more precious than life itself, one who dedicates one's life to the Buddha's practice is certain to attain Buddhahood. That's from the Gosho.
Yes.
Okay, so what's he reflecting in that paragraph? There is no greater purpose of your life than to devote it to the Lotus Sutra, to the propagation of the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day. Okay, to become the bodhisattva of the earth that you are, and to reveal your Buddhahood as it exists in this lifetime. Okay? He says the first sentence in this quote refers to a passage from the Former Affairs of the Medicine King chapter, of the Lotus Sutra, indicating that using our individual lives, which each of us prizes and cherishes, for the sake of Buddhism, is the highest form of offering we can make. So we can give offerings of flowers and fruits and whatever, but the real offering of any consequence that is karma changing, okay, is the offering of our life. That means, what's he saying when he's talking about offering your life? Does he mean like, put me at the stake and, shoot arrows in the, make me a target or some shit? No, what's he talking about?
Devote your life.
Devoting your life to the propagation of the correct teaching, right? To offer this hand to others to help bring them along, just as hands were offered to you.
Yes.
In reality, this life is like a relay race.
Yes.
We take the baton from our mentors and run with it, and by the time it's ready to hand off, we've become a mentor. Do you understand? That's the whole point. So he's saying, for the sake of Buddhism, is the highest form of offering we can make. Based on this, Nitra declares that by selflessly dedicating ourselves to Buddhism, so what does selflessly mean? It means that we put Buddhism first.
Yes.
Okay, we're not lazy. Okay, we have a purpose that we hold higher than our own personal interests. If it's teaching somebody about Buddhism versus watching the World Series, okay, I should be teaching Buddhism, okay?
Yes.
All right. So, based on this, Nitra declares that by selflessly dedicating ourselves to Buddhism, just like the boy Snow Mountains, who was willing to offer his life just to hear the last verse of a teaching, right? And the aesthetic aspiration for the law, who said, let me peel off my skin, I got nothing else to write down this teaching to leave it for others in the future. This is always about, what did the boy Snow Mountains do before he was ready to jump into the demon's mouth? This is the most significant part of it, because this was part of the deal and why he was ready to do the deal. It would have done no good for him to just sacrifice his life for the sake of hearing that last verse. What did he do? He carved it into a freaking tree and then said, okay, let me fulfill my promise. Because the most important thing was that understanding be left not only for himself, but for others. Okay, this is what Nichiren's teaching. This is what President Kate is talking about. Okay? All right? We can gain enlightenment. That's how we gain enlightenment. By being the Buddha. That's being the Buddha.
Yes.
Right? He says, therefore, that this course of practice, caring about others, Jigyo Kata, not just about our own Buddhahood, knowing that our Buddhahood is not possible unless we contribute to the Buddhahood of others.
Right.
Okay? Is the supreme path for attaining happiness. Because the supreme path for attaining happiness is attaining Buddhahood in your present form. This is how you do that. All right? In this same writing, Nitra highlights the folly of a life that mirrors the thinking of the two views, annihilation and permanence. He does so by describing how fish and birds, fearful for their safety, go to great lengths to hide themselves from predators, but are nevertheless haplessly tricked by bait or traps and end up losing their lives. In the letter from Sado, Nitra describes the Buddha's wisdom, which transcends the views of annihilation and permanence, as living and taking action with the spirit of selfless dedication for the sake of Buddhism. Pretty clearly lays it out there, right?
Yeah.
That means that we're ready to go to Tatsunokuchi ourselves in the form that we encounter it. Do you understand? Okay. This is an important point. By its very nature, a view of life and death considered only from the point of birth onward causes people to focus on whether their present self will end at death or continue. Not surprising, perhaps, since human beings, though keenly aware of their mortality, cannot personally experience what death or the afterlife is like while alive. But no matter how we may debate this issue from this perspective, it will not produce supreme wisdom or understanding, because none of us can go on the other side of the line of life and death and check it out and come back with any authority and share it, right? The view of annihilation, the complete cessation of existence, okay, for instance, will never free people from fear or anxiety over death. On the other hand, the view of permanence, which sees the self continuing as an unchanging, everlasting soul, often comes from one simple desire for immortality. Ultimately, it does not constitute the wisdom for elevating one's spiritual state, instead serving only to strengthen self-attachment and to deepen delusion. Because that's the concept I was brought up with, an unchanging, everlasting soul. I was going to go to heaven, right? But what did I have to do to go to heaven? I have to do shit but be forgiven for my sins. Frankly speaking, that's why I always thought Catholics, man, they got it made. They got the last rites thing, they're already covered, man. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to change anything. They didn't have to become some other person. They didn't have to eliminate all the things they were doing in their daily life that were creating karma.
They could even buy their...
Yeah, they could even buy. You could transactionally do this, okay? So, where am I? I just looked up and I lost my spot. Okay, in the same writing. Where am I here? Okay, by its very nature. Okay,
Yep.
this is the important part. Okay. By its very nature, a view of life and death considered only from a point of birth onward. I have already read this, but I'll go ahead and read through it. By its very nature, a view of life and death considered only from the point of birth onward causes people to focus on whether their present self will end at death or continue. Not surprising, perhaps, since human beings, though keenly aware of their mortality, cannot personally experience what death or the afterlife is like while alive. But no matter how we may debate this issue from this perspective, it will not produce supreme wisdom or understanding. The view of annihilation, the complete cessation of existence, for instance, will never free people from the fear or anxiety over death. On the other hand, the view of permanence, which sees the self continuing as an unchanging, everlasting soul, often comes from one's simple desire for immortality. Ultimately, it does not constitute the wisdom for elevating one's spiritual state, instead serving only to strengthen self-attachment and to deepen delusion. Of course, many philosophies and religious traditions of East and West espouse the existence of some eternal spiritual entity that transcends the present self. But even if those doctrines are effective in providing some peace of mind regarding death, they fall short of being the supreme wisdom for elevating the way people live. Because they're almost always focused of, save me. Whatever is going to save you. It's vertical. It's not horizontal.
Right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Rather, as I mentioned earlier, they cause people to be caught up in the delusions of self-attachment and the sufferings of aging and death. Buddhist scriptures show that when Shakyamuni was asked whether his life would continue after death, he did not answer one way or the other, because his doing so would not have contributed to helping people elevate their lives as living beings, and might only have added to their delusion and suffering about death. You understand? All right. So, going on to page 4. In Letter from Sato, and again, that's another Gosho we're going to read after this one, and anybody that needs this, will get it passed out to everybody somehow. We'll have a bunch printed up, those other 3 that are left. Okay? In Letter from Sato, Nitra taught his followers, who were then struggling bravely amid persecution, the way of selfless dedication to Buddhism. In other words, he taught them the spirit of not begrudging their lives and the basic criteria for leading lives that value the law above all. In other words, he went to Sato Island where nobody thought he would ever come back, and he not only survived, he thrived. Okay? Sai Rinpo became his follower there. Yeah! All right? And he kicked the Devil King's ass big time. In this way, by being a living example and going through the shit involved in being a living example. Because if you don't overcome adversity in your daily life, how can you tell somebody else that they can in theirs? Right? In this way, he aimed to help his followers break through the source of delusion and suffering concerning death, their narrow attachment to ego, and cast off that delusion and suffering. Right? We're temporary gatherings of the 5 components, man. We all go, okay? We regather because we're a karmic influence. But we don't have ego. There's no ego. We only have karma. If we have ego, we're misunderstanding, because ego is about self, independent self, unique self. Buddhism says there's no such thing. Everybody's with me? Yes? Okay. Unless we are free of the suffering of death, we cannot savor true happiness. But liberating ourselves from this suffering cannot be achieved through theorizing or intellectualizing. It comes from the life condition we carry into the state of death. It comes from the actions we take in this lifetime. Okay? Not at the last second. All right? Life and death make up the great eternal rhythm of the universe itself. When we come to apprehend the greater self within us, by the way, what death is involved in every one of us, in the actual physical reality of each one of our bodies. What death? The death of stars. We're all stardust. Yeah. All the elements and everything around us came from the death of a star. Okay, something had to die before we could exist. is my point. All right? So, when we come to apprehend, what does that? Life and death make up the great eternal rhythm of the universe itself. When we come to apprehend the greater self within us that is part of this rhythm, and feel in the depths of our being that this rhythm is the fundamental pulse sustaining our lives, we can overcome the suffering of death. So what did that just say? God, these are great sentences. These are great paragraphs. Let me say that. I didn't even finish the whole thing. Let me go back. Unless we are free of the suffering of death, we cannot savor true happiness, because eventually aging and sickness is going to catch up.
Yes.
Okay? But liberating ourselves from this suffering cannot be achieved through theorizing or intellectualizing. We have to take action. We have to create the karmic cause of attaining Buddhahood in our present form. That wisdom is what will keep that aging from being suffering. Okay? Life and death make up the great eternal rhythm of the universe itself. Okay? Again, stars. If it weren't for the death that preceded existence in this world, this world wouldn't exist. The dust that the earth is made of came from the shit of destruction of other, physical bodies. This is all the beautiful thing. Science just gets deeper and more profound, and Buddhism, not the Daishoninist Buddhism, just becomes more correct. And, it's unbelievable. All right, so he says, when we come to apprehend, what does apprehend mean?
To understand.
To understand in its correct state. Okay? When we come to understand correctly the greater self within us, when we realize that aspect of the universality of life and our connection with it, and the distinct nature doesn't make it separate or different. It's just a part of the overall functioning of life, okay? That part of that we're all part of this rhythm, that this earth is part of this rhythm, the birds and the trees, that everything is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yes.
Okay? And feel in the depths of our being that this is the rhythm, is the fundamental rhythm that's pulsing within our lives, sustaining our life, that's the true nature of our life. We then understand our life correctly for what it actually is. Okay? Not what we've been led to believe by other people's delusion. Okay? We can overcome the sufferings of death. And how do we know it's not other people's delusion? Because we experience in our life the Buddha wisdom to know that truth. We're not taking anyone else's opinion at that point in time. That realization is who we are. Okay? Sorry if I'm getting a little animated. The path of this inner liberation, because that's what it is. You talk about becoming a freed up, badass bodhisattva of the earth. That's liberation. Yes. The path of this inner liberation lies in chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and teaching others to do the same. Because if you only find this out for yourself and you don't share it with anybody else, you will not get the effect of being liberated. Trust me. Mental masturbation will not get you there. In the Heritage of the Ultimate Law of Life, Nitra explains this fundamental view of life and death, the view that we ascribe to as bodhisattvas of the earth, okay? As disciples of the original teacher, okay? The Buddha in his true identity. Life and death as functions of the mystic law on page 4. In this writing, Nitra Daishonin explains that the mystic law, Myoho, itself embodies the phases of life and death. Myo represents death and Ho, life. He also says that all life, all phenomena are subject to and undergo these two phases, which are functions of the mystic law. He said that back in 12th century, 13th century Japan, and we know from modern science that that is true. He indicates that birth and death are an inherent part of life, nothing to be afraid of. Okay? In this way, he seeks to prevent people from making the mistake of abhorring life and death, or from having a strong attachment to either. So he says, don't have a strong attachment to life. Understand life is going to end. Don't be all freaked out about it. Like, just be going with the flow. You're surfing the wave, right? When the wave breaks, you're on the beach, you go back out in the water again. The mystic law is the eternal, infinite law of the universe. This eternal law embodies the phases of life and death. In other words, the two phases are themselves the rhythm of the eternal law and appear as the life and death of countless living entities, as the arising and extinction of all phenomena, as all kinds of causes and effects in every dimension, as the harmony and dynamism of the universe as a whole. Everybody's with me? Mm-hmm. That was a mouthful, but that was pretty much synopsis of life. Okay? This concept of life and death as functions of the mystic law constitutes the matter of the ultimate importance of our lives, because true happiness can only be found in living in accord with this great rhythm of life and death. This is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Mentor and disciple in Buddhism transmit the heritage of attaining Buddhahood on page 4, second column. I have summed up the meaning of the matter of ultimate importance concerning life and death, one main theme of the heritage of the ultimate law of life. Next, I will confirm the meaning of heritage, another major theme, while going over the essential points of the entire writing. The ultimate law of life and death as transmitted from the Buddha to all living beings is Myoho Renge-kyo. The 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo were transferred from Shakyamuni and many treasures, the 2 Buddhas inside the treasure tower, to Bodhisattva superior practices, carrying on a heritage unbroken since the infinite past. That's all from Nitra and Daishonin. Just said that in the Gosha, right? From WND page 216. Continuing the Daishonin. Myo represents death and Ho life. Living beings that pass through the 2 phases of life and death are the entities of the 10 worlds, or entities of Myoho Renge-kyo. Going on. Life and death are simply the 2 functions of Myoho Renge-kyo. Further from the Gosho. Shakyamuni and many treasures, the 2 Buddhas are also the 2 phases of life and death. Continuing from the Gosho. Shakyamuni Buddha, who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago, the Lotus Sutra that leads all people to Buddhahood, and we ordinary human beings are in no way different or separate from one another. To chant Myoho Renge-kyo with this realization is to inherit the ultimate law of life and death. For one who summons up one's faith and chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the profound insight that now is the last moment of one's life, the Sutra proclaims, when the lives of these persons come to an end, they will be received in the hands of 1,000 Buddhas who will free them from all fear and keep them from falling into the evil paths of existence. The heritage of the Lotus Sutra, continuing with quotes from the Gosho, the heritage of the Lotus Sutra flows within the lives who never forsake it in any lifetime whatsoever, whether in the past, present, or future. Now, the lecture continues. The President Kate is saying, the Nitra and Daishonin begins by saying, all of these things that I've just read, that the ultimate law of life and death is Myoho Renge-kyo, and that Myoho Renge-kyo is the heritage that Bodhisattva superior practices, the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, received from Shakyamuni Buddha and many treasures at the ceremony in the air depicted in the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, right? As mentioned earlier, only through living and taking action with the spirit of selfless dedication for the sake of Buddhism can Myoho Renge-kyo be transmitted as the ultimate law of life and death. Only through living and taking action with the spirit of selfless dedication for the sake of Buddhism can Myoho Renge-kyo be transmitted as the ultimate law of life and death. Who does that? Us. Thank you, Rio. The Bodhisattvas of the earth. Therefore, Nitra cites the name of Bodhisattva superior practices as the teacher or mentor, who's the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. That's why he's our teacher and mentor, okay, who takes on the commitment to live and take action with this spirit, to create the object of devotion and the teaching of the Buddhism of sowing for the latter day, which lasts forever. He explains that the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death only flows in faith, based on the oneness of mentor and disciple. So this heritage of the ultimate law of life and death flows only in the lives of the disciples of the original teacher, the bodhisattvas of the earth. So you qualify the fact that you're a bodhisattva of the earth through your actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. It says, next he clarifies that the mystic law embodies the phases of life and death, and that the life and death of all living entities, the arising and extinction of all phenomena. So did you understand why he made that qualification? What's the life and death of all living entities? That's all living things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the arising and extinction of all phenomena includes insentient things as well, world systems and all that kind of stuff. Do you understand? Okay. And phenomena constitute life and death as functions of the mystic law. All of this combined creates reality. Okay, reality is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in its most discernible state.
Yes.
The living beings of the 10 worlds and the 2 Buddhas, Shakyamuni and many treasures, embody life and death as functions of the mystic law. Everybody's with me? Okay, so bottom of page 5, second column. Based on this, Nitra then declares that there is absolutely no distinction among Shakyamuni, Buddha, who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago, the Lotus Sutra that leads all people to Buddhahood, and we ordinary human beings as entities of Myoho Renge-kyo, the mystic law. Okay? He then he explains that only through faith and chanting Myoho Renge-kyo, which we don't chant Myoho Renge-kyo, we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, with clear belief, that's faith, can in this that we can inherit the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death. Everybody's with me? Okay. Faith, chanting Myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, with the conviction that that Buddhas and the law for attaining enlightenment are both Myoho Renge-kyo, that we ourselves are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, that our teachers as well as us as disciples are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come once. Do you understand? With the conviction that Buddhas and the law for attaining enlightenment are both Myoho Renge-kyo, that Myoho Renge-kyo exists nowhere but within our lives, is the essence of accepting and upholding the mystic law, which is the fundamental practice of Nichiren Buddhism. So what is that trying to qualify to you there? It's trying to let you know that the aspect of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that is the only thing that exists in truth and reality is the aspect that lives in your life. Okay? Because that's where it resides. Okay? And there's nothing greater than that aspect of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that exists in your life. There's no great Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that's beyond that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? That's the point. The law is the law is the law is the law. It's the law for ants. It's the law for microscopic. It's for photons. It's for the law is the law is the law. It doesn't change.
Yes.
Okay? So, where am I? No, okay. Nowhere but within the lives is the essence of accepting and upholding the mystic law. Faith in that fact. Faith in that truth. Okay? Is everybody with me?
Yes.
All right. Nichiren further explains in terms of life and death that the essence of faith in the mystic law is having the attitude that now is the last moment of one's life. This means steadfastly upholding genuine faith at each moment of our lives, so that even if we were faced with death, we would have no regrets and would calmly transcend the suffering of death. Now, what did that just... I keep having to stop because, I know that's the part where I've got it double underlined here. Remind me that I'm there. Okay, I'm going to go back again. Let me go back to the beginning of that paragraph. Nichiren further explains, in terms of life and death, that the essence of faith in the mystic law is in having the attitude that now is the last moment of one's life. This means steadfastly upholding genuine faith at each moment of our lives, so that even if we were faced with our death, we would have no regrets and would calmly transcend the suffering of death. And when we carry out such genuine faith until the last second of our lives in this existence, we can accept and uphold the Lotus Sutra across the three existences, past, present, and future. This, Nitra says, is what it means to inherit. It means for the heritage of the Lotus Sutra to flow within our lives. Okay, so but what was he? Go back to my double line here. Okay, what's he saying here? This means steadfastly upholding genuine faith. Now, what's genuine faith? Well, first of all, what's steadfastly mean? Means we don't take days off. We don't blow it off. We don't do it when we feel like it. Steadfastly is a commitment that's like all the time. All right? Steadfast, right? Doesn't go up and down. It's steady, right? Okay. Steadfastly upholding genuine faith. So what is genuine faith?
No doubt.
Faith based on action. And
No
again,
doubt.
doubt-free faith. If you have doubt-free faith, it's going to be based on action, right? But it's not enough for this to be an intellectual process.
Right.
You have to be involved in being the Buddha. You got to be doing Jigyo Kata. You got to be practicing not only for yourself, all of this shit we're talking about, but also you're doing this because you're Nichiren's disciple. This is your job. You believe, you bought into the fact that this is why you made your advent, just like he made his advent because of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. You made your advent because of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo too. Okay? So he's saying that we would have, okay, that so that with genuine faith in each of us, so that even if, so what's he saying there?
Even if, in
He
case.
says, just we may. We're not guaranteed to die of old age. We can die of many reasons and die at many different ages, having accomplished whatever mission it was we came here to accomplish. We don't have all the same longevity. So this is saying, even if, so what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to be ready for death, is what this is saying, 24/7.
Yes.
Okay, no regrets. Why? Because you're living as the Buddha right now in this moment. What have you got to regret?
Yes.
Are you going to die and have any problems with death? No. You get to come back whenever you decide to come back. Are you going to be all lonely and forget the people that you're going to be so sorry? You're going to be... No! You already have the freedom to understand, dudes, you're going to be coming. And hey, guys, everybody that already left before me, how you been? Okay? The life condition of separation is never going to be felt as an anguish. It's never going to be true separation. It's only going to be for a period of time until the conditions are right for everybody to get back and party together again. Is that not what we're doing right now?
Yes.
We're partying. I'm partying. I don't know if you're getting the eshafuni off that, but this brings me delight. Okay? So he's saying we calmly transcend the sufferings of death. So there may be pain. There may be shit going down that's not pleasant, but we are not in a state of suffering over that. We're kind of grinning, going like, well, shit, I knew it was going to be like this. That's cool. Now, what's the function of my life at the point that I'm dying? What's the most important thing I can do as someone approaching death?
Not change.
Exactly. Be the example of how to die. Exactly. How to enter death with calm, with no regrets, with absolute faith, with comforting everybody crying because they think you're dying. And you go like, no, I need to take a nap. Okay? All right? And when we carry out such genuine faith until the last second of our lives in this existence, we can accept and uphold the Lotus Sutra as Buddhas. That means that all existences in the past are formed. There's no karma left over from any of them. We've transformed all our karmic influence to Buddhahood. Do you understand? Now we get to call the shots. That's why we'll always be with the people we want to be with. Because we don't care about what circumstance that we have to be born in order to be with them. Do you understand?
That's why you're a badass.
That's why you're a badass.
That's right.
That's why you and Nitra and Daishonin are equal. Because you take on that challenge that he taught you how to take on. With the frame of mind he taught you to take. You're his disciple. There is no separation between you and him. Okay, that's why you have to behave like him. That's why you got to be ready to go to Tatsunikuchi and go, Hachiman, I got your name. You know? All right. So, This, Nitra says, it is what it means for the heritage of the Lotus Sutra to flow within our lives. Okay? I took a long time, but I think I made that pretty clear.
Yeah.
When we uphold correct faith until our last moment in this world, the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death will flow in our lives continually throughout the cycle of birth and death, across past, present, and future. This is the epitome of life and death as functions of the mystic law. Therefore, continuing faith throughout our lives, throughout our existence in this world, is crucial. Our remaining steadfast in correct faith until our final moment is itself the attainment of Buddhahood in this lifetime. At that time, death will not signify the cessation of life, but the completion of one life and the start of a new, even profounder existence. Because the merit that you gain by doing what you are supposed to do and actually doing it and not succumbing to any of the devils, you've advanced. Yeah. All right? Such a death will be totally free of all fear and anxiety. We will savor joy in both life and death. We can leave as the example. Okay? We encourage others, don't be afraid. Page 6. The great vow for Kosen Rufu in the path of mentor and disciple. And I'm going to go ahead and read this through. All disciples and lay supporters of Nitra should chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the spirit of many in body but one in mind, transcending all differences among themselves to become as inseparable as fish in the water in which they swim. This spiritual bond is the basis for the universal transmission of the ultimate law of life and death. Herein lies the true goal of Nichiren's propagation. When you are so united, even the great desire for widespread propagation can be fulfilled. Second column, page 6. Nichiren has been trying to awaken all the people. Okay, this is again a bunch of quotes from the Gosho. Nichiren has been trying to awaken all the people of Japan to faith in the Lotus Sutra so they too can share the heritage and attain Buddhahood. But instead they have persecuted me in various ways and finally had me banished to this island. You have followed Nichiren, however, and met with suffering as a result. It pains me deeply to think of your anguish. Next. It must be ties of karma from the distant past that have destined you, Sai Renbo, to become my disciple at a time like this. And you and me, Kubano. Shakyamuni and many treasures certainly realized this truth. The sutra statement, those persons who had heard the law dwelled here and there in various Buddha lands, constantly reborn in company with their teachers, cannot be false in any way. President Keita continues. In the first half of this writing, as I've just outlined, Nichiren Daishonin sets forth the requirements for us as disciples of Bodhisattva superior practices, as Bodhisattvas of the earth, right? He's the leader, to establish faith through embracing Myoho Renge-kyo. In the latter half, Nichiren's focus shifts to the practice of Kosen Rufu, aimed at sharing with all people faith that accepts and upholds the mystic law. In other words, he is saying that when we cherish the great desire for Kosen Rufu and chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the unity of many in body, one in mind, the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death will flow in our lives. He adds that the true goal of his propagation efforts lies in this struggle for Kosen Rufu. When we focus on the great desire for Kosen Rufu and its attainment, the bond of mentor and disciple, and the unity of many in body, one in mind, hold crucial importance. Further, Nichiren declares that the heritage of the law that enables all people to attain Buddhahood is found in the path he opened for Kosen Rufu, or widespread propagation, in the latter day of the law. Nichiren then emphasizes the profound karmic bonds of mentor and disciple that link him and Sai Renbo, to whom this writing is addressed, and who had weathered persecution on account of upholding Nichiren's teaching. To cherish this same great desire and to fight with the same spirit of selfless commitment as the mentor, even in the face of arduous difficulties, is the path of the oneness of mentor and disciple in the struggle for Kosen Rufu in the latter day of the law. It is the mentors, plural, and disciples, plural, of the Soka Gakkai who have revived the great path of Nichiren Buddhism in the present age, widening and expanding it further so that today it connects people throughout the world, because it never did until those first three presidents and the advent of the Soka Gakkai. The mentor of the Kosen Rufu of the entity of the law, the Gohonzon, is Nichiren Daishonin. So Daisaku Ikeda just qualified. I'm saying mentor. I'm talking about Nichiren, not me. But when I function as Nichiren, just as each of you can, you are also mentors just as I am. Do you understand? All right. The mentor of the Kosen Rufu of the entity of the law, the Gohonzon, is Nichiren Daishonin, the Buddha of the latter day, who revealed the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for the enlightenment of all humanity into the eternal future and set forth the method for its propagation. The Soka Gakkai is an organization carrying out the Buddha's will and decree. It is a harmonious gathering of believers directly connected to Nichiren and has spread Nichiren Buddhism throughout the world while overcoming countless hardships and obstacles. Kosen Rufu is a struggle to help all people transcend the differences. Kosen Rufu is a struggle to help all people transcend the suffering of death and actualize lives of genuine happiness, thus establishing a world in which genuine peace prevails. This is the true purpose of Nichiren's propagation. The Soka Gakkai's founding president, Tnesaburo Makaguchi, fully inherited this spirit and set an example of selfless dedication to Buddhism by giving his life for his beliefs. The second president, Josei Toda, carried on Mr. Makaguchi's struggle with the same unwavering commitment. He established the ideals and practice of Soka Gakkai and laid the framework for the harmonious community of believers founded on the spirit of many in body, one in mind. Earnestly following this great path of mentor and disciple, upholding the principles of humanism and pacifism that are the essence of Nichiren Buddhism, I have spread its essential message across the globe through the pursuit of dialogue. When this path followed by the first and second and third presidents of the Soka Gakkai flows vibrantly as the lifeblood, transmitting the philosophy and practice of Nichiren Buddhism throughout the world, the foundation of Kosen Rufu in the present age will have been completed. The crucial 5-year period for completing this process has now begun. This was written originally in 2008. It wasn't put in this form factor until 2009. So we're already past that 5-year period. And what has happened in that 5-year period from 2008 to 2013? All the stuff we've been reading for the last 6 or 7 or 8 years or 9 years, whatever it's been now. That's when all of this has come out. Okay? So this foundation is this universal understanding. Okay? The heritage of, the true meaning of heritage is the heritage of faith. The important point is to carry out your practice confident that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo alone is the heritage that was transferred from Shakyamuni and many treasures to Bodhisattva superior practices. Be resolved to summon forth the great power of faith and chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the prayer that your faith will be steadfast and correct at the moment of death. Never seek any other way to inherit the ultimate law of life and death and manifest it in your life. Only then will you realize that earthly desires are enlightenment and that the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. Even embracing the Lotus Sutra would be useless without the heritage of faith. That was from the Gosho again. At the conclusion of this writing, Nichiren Daishonin emphasizes the heritage of faith. Again, he says, even embracing the Lotus Sutra would be useless without the heritage of faith. Exactly 50 years ago, my mentor, Josei Toda, lectured on this writing in Kansai, where our organization's motto is, ever victorious. During that stirring lecture, he said to the members so dear to him, please attain a state of life of true happiness based on the heritage of faith, and please enable others to do the same. He said, please attain Buddhahood in your present form and help others attain Buddhahood in their present form. The heritage of the ultimate law of life and death starts to flow and spread throughout society when we make a vow to join our mentor in joyfully propagating the mystic law. And that's something that each of us does as an individual. We don't wait as a group. This isn't a group decision. This is you as an individual deciding, I'm going to take Nichiren as my mentor and carry that to the max, to the last moment of my life. That will include Daisaku Ikeda. It'll include everything else we've been reading. It'll include all the understandings we've discussed. I deeply believe that the present emergence of a great global network of bodhisattvas of the earth will lead to a profound change in the way humanity perceives life and death. It will cause the heritage of peace, humanism, and happiness to flow swift and strong throughout the world. It will spark a fundamental transformation of the life state of all humankind. Now, what did he just say there, though? Did he limit that paragraph after he's already talked about the Soka Gakkai? He's already talked about Josei Toga. But what did he really say there? He didn't limit this to the Soka Gakkai. I deeply believe that the present emergence of a great global network of bodhisattvas of the earth, are we not all that chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, are we not all bodhisattvas of the earth, will lead to profound change in the way humanity perceives life and death. It will cause the heritage of peace, humanism, and happiness to flow swift and strong throughout the world. Kosen Rufu will occur. It will spark a fundamental transformation of the life state of all humankind. Kosen Rufu. You, as an individual, can contribute to this reality regardless of your membership in doing anything else. If you live your life this way, the result will be the same. And I entrust the realization of this noble mission to my fellow members throughout the world. Okay? I have faith in my disciples. Above all, I am counting on the youth. I am counting on those of you that have not already decided that you already know there is all to know. I'm counting on all of you that will keep trying to expand your understanding to the last moment of your life as I've instructed and tried to help teach you. So these key points on page 9, I get through this quickly. Transcending the extremes of annihilation and permanence, the wisdom or insight that enables Shakyamuni to attain enlightenment represents the wisdom that conquers the delusion and suffering related to death. Based on this wisdom, the Buddha rejected the two most common views of death, which represented two extremes, and both of which he considered erroneous. Neither could fully enable people to transcend the fear and uncertainty of death. One of these was the view of death as the annihilation or complete cessation of self, the view of annihilation, while the other was the view of death as the self continuing in the form of an unchanging immortal soul or spirit, the view of permanence. Both views consider the question of life and death only from the point of birth until one's demise, with life and death seen as opposites. As such, neither view embodies the wisdom that correctly perceives the true reality of life and death. Functions of the mystic law. The mystic law is the eternal infinite law of the universe. This eternal law embodies the phases of life and death. In other words, the two phases are themselves the rhythm of the eternal law and appear as the life and death of countless living entities, as the arising and extinction of all phenomena, as all kinds of causes and effects in every dimension, as the harmony and dynamism of the universe as a whole. Mentor and disciple transmit the heritage. Nitra and Daishonin begins by saying that the ultimate law of life and death is Myoho Renge Kyo, and that Myoho Renge Kyo is the heritage that Bodhisattva superior practices, the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, received from Shakyamuni Buddha and many treasures. As mentioned earlier, only through living and taking action with the spirit of selfless dedication for the sake of Buddhism can Myoho Renge Kyo be transmitted as the ultimate law of life and death. Therefore, Nitra cites the name of Bodhisattva superior practices as the teacher or mentor who takes on the commitment to live and take action with this spirit. He explains that the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death only flows in faith based on the oneness of mentor and disciple. The great vow for Kosen Rufu. Nitra declares that the heritage of the law that enables all people to attain enlightenment is found in the path he opened for Kosen Rufu, or a widespread propagation in the latter day of the law. Nitra then emphasizes the profound karmic bonds of mentor and disciple that link him and Sairembo, to whom this writing is addressed, and who had weathered persecution on account of holding Nichiren's teaching. To cherish the same great desire and to fight with the same spirit of selfless commitment as the mentor, even in the face of arduous difficulties, is the path of the oneness of mentor and disciple in the struggle for Kosen Rufu in the latter day of the law. Dialogue and reflection. Both views, annihilation and impermanence, consider the question of life and death only from the point of birth until one's demise, with life and death seen as opposites. As such, neither view embodies the wisdom that correctly perceives the true reality of life and death. The question that he's asking you to ponder is, how has the Buddhist view of life and death affected your own view? think about that. That's for you to think about. Nitra declares that the heritage of the law that enables all people to attain enlightenment is found in the path he opened for Kosen Rufu, or widespread propagation in the latter day of the law. How has your dedication to Kosen Rufu changed? And how has that affected your practice and faith? I could spend a whole nother hour talking about that. Okay, and Sling has now changed the Facebook page, which is Rio's live stream, right? Rio's live stream is on that, to Old Soup's study group,
Right.
Ikeda's Gosho lectures. Okay, so the point being that I only look at, I don't do Facebook. My wife does Facebook. I don't do Facebook, so I don't get to see everybody that's participating on the Facebook side. But the Facebook side's just as important and just as big as what's going on with YouTube. Okay. So what we really need to do, because I've been inspired to believe that there's a life behind what's going on with these Wednesday meetings, and so subsequently we need to figure out how we can all kind of like be connected in a more personal way. Okay, so we're going to try and figure out a way for the people that view these things as like videos or through a live stream, to be able to communicate questions or life experiences or requests for encouragement or daimoku or all the things we do on our line group, should be available. We should be able to have an exchange with our friends from all over the world. Okay.
Go to Facebook.
So again, at the end of this, you're going to see a Facebook link, right? That's going to link you to the Facebook thing.
And welcome, join us.
And welcome to join us, please, if you want. Thank you so much. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.